Yo, what is up, everybody? My name is Kid Icarus, and this is my podcast. My guest today is a hip hop artist. You can find his most recent album, Philosopher's Dream, over on Spotify. You can check out his most recent video, Live, featuring Destruct, over on YouTube. Please
Word.
welcome Expand the Mind.
What's happening, man?
All right, so now this is the actual interview, and we're
Reality
set up
strikes.
now. Yeah. So first off, so you make hip hop music, yeah?
Yeah, of
What's
course.
up with that? Why do you do that?
Okay, so I make hip hop music, but I'd like to add that it is not the first place I arrived musically. I
Okay.
touched down in almost every other genre that I still work with today. Not like, well, I've worked with like, acoustic heads, people that do like guitar, and I've worked with like bands, and I've worked with other hip hop artists, people who just make beats, and so on. I kind of ventured into this after doing everything else.
Okay.
And like I found that I wasn't attentive enough when I was young to play instruments the way I wanted to.
Okay.
I was real good at like doing ADHD shit, like making beats up with my pencil, or like once in a while coming back to the keyboard and like continuing on a beat. Like I was really good at that. I had made hundreds at a younger, like 16, 17. But I had also been writing poetry for a long, long time.
Okay.
And I finally found the rhythm at which I wanted to, like you were saying in like the question slash whatever, finding that rhythm to project forward made me feel like I was doing something proper.
Okay.
It made me feel like I had a task that I was good at, that nobody else was particularly directing me on, because I had been called so many things at a young age with the bipolar and the ADHD and all these manic depression, all this other stuff, right? So I wanted something so badly that I could grip and call my own. So from a very young age, I've been writing. I turned that into rap after listening to all this other music my dad had given me when I was young, and stuff that I had not only inherently listened to, but stuff that I had kind of like gravitated towards, maybe newer 90s things like Rage or Red Hot Chili Peppers, Green Day, whatever, right? And then, those guys are like, although they're rockers, they're rappers too, And I think that kind of bridged me over, and I found other stuff because I was very angry and deluded at the time. So the younger Eminem spoke to me, in a big way. And then I kind of started just finding out about stuff like Sage Francis and all these other cats, Onyx and The Last Emperor. And I had a very East Coast bring up with the whole hip hop scene. So, but to answer your question, that was like a timeline on how I got into it. But a more like word for word answer would be, it helped me like solidify something I believed in for the first time in life, and I never let it go.
Right on. One of the things that stood out there is you said like this was the first time you found something that you were good at, that was your own thing. That you
I love sports. I kicked ass at sports, like all-star and blah 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 blah. I did travel ball and so on, basketball, soccer, baseball, and also I did football. I did all these different sports, kick ass at them, but the school wouldn't really let me. There was rules and regulations to stuff, right? And there was still somehow some kind of link that was like, oh, you can do this, but you can't do that, and blah 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 blah. And I was like, nah, dude. Like, where am I actually free? The paper.
Okay. Yeah, that is one of the things that also got me into seriously making music. Was like, I'm decent at a lot of things that I tried. Like I feel pretty confident in this idea where like if you give me a task, I can kind of jerry rig my way into accomplishing it. Like I'm pretty quick on that. But when it came to making music, I was like, this is the one thing that like I'm superb at. Like it's one thing where like you put me in a room with 10 other people, I think I'll be in the top 2 or 1, you know? And like finding that thing in life is kind of a difficult thing to find. Like when you're actually good at something, it's like, well, this has to be something I invest more in, because you only get better. You ever
Right.
play League of Legends or any games
No,
like that?
so is it like an RPG or?
It's kind of RPG like, but it's in games. Like you
Okay.
start every game as level 1,
Okay.
and by the end of the game you're level 18.
Okay.
But there's a term in it called snowballing,
Okay.
because like if you get a kill over one of the other team players, you get like tons of gold, which
Mhm.
allows you to buy more stuff so that
Right.
you're stronger than them. And so like the goal is to start snowballing until like you're
Right.
just dominating them.
Right.
And so like I feel like that is something, when you find something like making music where you're like, okay, I'm good at this.
Right.
You're able to start snowballing because you're able to, get more opportunities to perform because people are like, oh, he's dope.
Yeah.
Or more opportunities to feature on somebody's stuff because
Right.
you're good. And then those opportunities end up feeding back into your ability more. And
Yeah.
so it just kind of snowballs from
Yeah,
there.
especially when you have to act on those abilities with instinct versus with plan.
Yeah.
And I think that helps a lot in the arduous steps of the original build. So like the first however many layers of bricks you need to actually make the foundation for something.
Yeah.
Using your intention, using your gut feeling, using your understanding of patterns and universal measure or whatever without using the calculator.
Yeah.
No. You must use your brain.
Yeah.
That's what's cool about it. And so I don't mean must as in like you have to. There's thousands of ways to get to where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the way that I was able to pull it off was all freestyle in the beginning.
Yeah. You're drawn to
all my SoundCloud stuff.
Yeah.
It was all freestyle. Like I wrote it freestyle. I recorded it on my phone freestyle, and then I like remembered the freestyle to record it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was all my early SoundCloud stuff. And people, almost 1,000 people, more than the common number on my YouTube currently, were very interested in and would play my song. And that's a lot for me. So I'm trying to figure out how to stay in touch with whom I was while connecting with who I want to be.
Okay.
It's a very interesting part of my life. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I love that idea. One of the things, like the reason I call myself Kid Icarus, right, is because I am I like these big lofty themes. I was raised super Christian, and like I've read a lot of the Bible, but also like other mythological works. And so these big ideas I really love, but at the same time I really love cartoons, and particularly I make music for my 16-year-old self.
Okay.
So it's that same thing of like, what lessons have I learned now about who I want to be, and how can I tell that to my younger self so that I can get him there quicker?
Right.
How can I make it still relate to that younger version of me?
That's so funny you said that. That's so funny.
Yeah, because I mean, I was super cool when I was 16 to 19. I was like, this is where I should be right now. And so now as I'm older, it's still like, if I can make it appeal to his taste, because his taste was really good. And I know I'm making something good.
Yeah. The inner child.
Yeah. So on that topic, where are you trying to go? Where do you think the next step is for what you're making?
So I made a lot in the last couple of years. I'm almost done writing 2 additional albums. I'm finishing one and writing 2. I'm just finished writing a side EP. So aside from that, I still have 2 more albums for you guys.
Yeah.
So Flavor Elaborator and will be the first edition to come out as far as an album goes. I'm really excited for that. There will be mature sound, a genuine grasp of what I'm feeling growing up is like.
Okay.
Making calmer decisions, being a little bit more intact with my real, what I want versus what others implement and what I catch versus, you know what I mean? Like I'm creating the game. I'm not just playing it now.
Yeah.
It's different. And so then I play by blah, 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 hang out, be in the game, and then pull back and then create something similar or try to add to it in a way that's fruitful, you know, regardless of the situation. Obviously, that's a very general scenario that I just described.
Yeah.
But that fits to a lot of things if you back up enough. But yeah, so what I want to do now is I want to release these projects that I'm creating, that I have created. I've worked very hard on them. Some of them I've been writing for 3 years. Shouts out to Oso Blanco. The dude's a very, very cool producer.
Oh yeah, is he producing?
He's producing one of my joints.
Yeah, I have a
beatnik of sorts.
I have a file on this computer that is just full of his beats. That, like, I messaged him once and I was like, "Hey, I saw you perform somewhere. I really like your stuff, and can I get some of your beats to listen to?" And like, he sent me a folder of like 40 tracks. And like, I keep it on a flash drive. I plug it into my car every once in a while.
Oh yeah,
he's super.
He's
sick.
A beast, and he's very jazzual. He has a very interesting way of enunciating certain highlights of the beat, so that it makes a different sound perhaps than you're used to hearing, and I like that a lot. That's something that the Dead did, and some of my other favorite artists as far as rock and roll and psychedelic rock and so on. Which brings me back to what you were saying a second ago. The freestyle thing I came into with a large aspect of the Ken Kesey involvement, which is Ken Kesey's like One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest author. He also rocked with the Dead when they did. Before the Dead was the Grateful Dead, they were the Warlocks.
Okay.
And the Warlocks were the performing band for the acid tests. The acid tests were run by Timothy Leary, who had originally done it inside of a college with, I don't know if it was like UCLA or somewhere up in San Fran. But then when he left, he had stolen a bunch of the LSD. And so they started doing tests, and like basically every time you come to an acid test, you're going to be dosed. You're here to get turned on. That's what we're here to do. And people would come from everywhere to get turned on, and the Warlocks would play their set, and they'd come up with these tracks and so on. Originally, I don't know if they were as psychedelic, but they were a lot of folk music, a lot of there's other names for it. I can't really come up with the branch names for the genres right now, because every branch genre is so pocketed and whatever. I don't want to like misinterpret anything or say anything wrong. But the idea there was to give people something that was like a freestyle, because the way that they ended up recording the Dead, and once they got big and got their record label name and all that other shit, they were like, "Hey, we want you guys to record our stuff. Fuck what the record labels say. Like, we want you to show up and record every single one of our shows. And by the way, log it, share it with your friends, do whatever you want. Spread the word for us. You don't have to just buy our music, And I think that's something that's really important now. And we're kind of stemming away from that, as I would say, populace here. Everybody's like, "Oh, how am I going to make money doing this? How am I going to make money doing this?"
Yeah.
And I think that it's less. They're less. Considered. That's the wrong word. They're less.
I think that might be the right word.
They're considering the. Okay, I meant, so I said it in the wrong context, but they're considering the artistry a little less than I do, and I'm noticing. And I'm not saying that to get on anybody in particular's nerves or talk shit at all, but I am saying that to illuminate the aspect. Yeah. And I think it's important that we don't always make music to make money. But I do like to make money making music because I'm good at it. Because I do arrive at the table with several aspects covered, an idea, a flow, a pitch up and down, a way to sing it, perhaps. I have several ways of doing things. It doesn't mean that I'm the one that's going to do them. Yeah, I need teammates to do this with. But when I evolve, and as I'm evolving, I'm becoming part of more and more people and their vision, and seeing myself in them and so on. So we're becoming teammates whether they like it or not. And I like that. You don't always have to say, "Hey, want to be on the team." It's kind of like, just like, "Yo, let's work." Yeah. It'll happen gradually. And when it does happen, and you either get over your ego and you ask me how, or when it's going to happen, or whatever, or we make something together, and then I have to be like, there's been songs that I've made with people who outright the scenario, and they just created something I couldn't have fathomed by saying the topic that I imagined.
Yeah.
So therefore, now I have to assimilate and come up with something that either A, backs that person 100%, or B, backs that person and makes me sound good.
Yeah.
And I'm more concerned with the first one, but the second one's cool to incorporate, you know? So
Yeah.
I want to like be myself, be the ETM that I'm supposed to be, expand the mind, bring the style and so on, but do it in a way that people are able to appreciate and the other artists can still accentuate themselves and create an experience for the listener.
Yeah.
And so I've done that on several tracks that are coming up on Flavor Elaborator. That's something I pushed my limit on. I definitely went out of my way with Bree. Shout out to Unspoken Views. She's out in OC. Very cool girl. And Mo's going to be on this upcoming album too, Mosaic 1. Really, really dope artist. I'm excited to work with him. So I have worked with him on so many, all of my last 5 or 6 music videos, several albums and visual outcomes and so on.
I love that. That's one of the great things about working with other artists is that when you hear something that they have done good, and you know that like, all right, I can't do necessarily what I normally do on this because it's not necessarily the same style of what I normally do lyrically or like sonically.
Right.
And so you have to push the limits of what you do to be able to be like, all right, I'm gonna do something that works with this, works with their ideas, works in their context, but at the best of my ability.
Right.
And so it causes you to kind of branch out. You know those graphs where it's like the pentagon and there's like a little thing measuring inside, and it's like finding the different, spreading out to the different points. You know, you want to fill the whole pentagon eventually, but you need those like little challenges in there just to push yourself a little bit further.
That's right.
Yeah.
The grasp.
on the topic of those acid test music and stuff, have you ever heard Charles Manson's music? You ever listen to his album?
Yeah. So I've actually done some good research on him.
Yeah.
He tripped me out a lot when I was young. I was very interested, but I would like to add more invoked and involved with being somebody who is capable of destruction as a child and as a young adult. Now I'm not. Now I can do those things, but I do my best to not do those things. I really do my best. I've been physically, verbally, and otherwise, you know, not sexually, but assaulted. You know what I mean? And at shows, whether by promoters or people who I say my thing, I do my thing, they don't like it. Oh, then some people fucking hit me from behind. You never know what's gonna happen. But does that give me the right to get up and then, you know, beat the fucking living shit out of them while they're sitting underneath 200-300-pound women that are holding the guy down? Like he's already underneath 200-300-pound broads. Like there's nothing more embarrassing than that.
Yeah.
So I'm good. Like I don't need to take my anger out. I'd like to punch him, but he's already down there, so I'm good. And
that's an interestingly specific.
Oh, it's very specific.
200-300-pound broad.
200-300-pound broad, maybe like 250, 225. I'm 225, and I look slim compared to them. So I'm thinking they're at least 300 each. Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway, but yeah, scenarios aside and specificity aside.
Yeah.
During these situations that we get trials and tribulations in our life and we get tested, like you know, because you're a martial arts guy, it takes a lot of self-recognition and respect to say, I am not going to step to that level right now because that's below where I'm at. And I know that I only got put in that situation because the other person had a lack of control.
Yeah.
And I can see that. And so I can't act upon my lack of control. If I do, then I'm just as weak as the person who just did that, mentally speaking. And there's a lot of other layers in films that cover the eyes that say otherwise, and that's fine.
It's a good philosophy. It's the act of breaking the cycle.
Right.
You can't repay evil with evil because it just continues.
Right.
And grows. It's that same snowball effect.
Hey.
It just escalates.
Bringing it in. Yes, sir.
But like, regardless of Manson's like personal actions or whatever.
He was a violent dude.
His music.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
In a very interestingly psychedelic way.
Yeah.
Because like there's certain tracks on his album that don't have a consistent time signature. Like it speeds up and slows down at will.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that's sadly lost in our heavily like electronic
Yeah.
environment when we
Great fucking
record.
musicians can, on a dime, change the fucking pace of the tempo.
Yeah.
Great
And
musicians.
it does something trippy to your head when you're listening to music that starts speeding up. Like you start getting like anxious or maybe empowered, depending on like
where you're at, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so listening to it with that in mind, and then also the context of him being wild and violent, it's like, wow, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, he had these great ideas, but I think they were very polluted with us and our garbage, and that's the thing, and that's what people don't really necessarily look at in the context of him, because they get so sopped up in all the other things that could possibly be focused on. And I know, and I get it, but look past that story and onto his past, or look past
they look
the
at the
past
end of the
and onto the big thing, right?
Because like his upbringing was,
I mean,
terrible.
You don't get brought. He didn't get like more than, I think it was like 3 years at a time, and they were in very, very young age where he wasn't in the system.
Yeah.
Past that point, he was in there, and I've been in the system for a long time, so I'm going to be one of. I don't know how many people we've had on this show that have been part of it, but I was fucked up and I'm back, so I'm good. But when I went back to my center that I went to, like in Utah, they looked at me like I was like Moses. They were like, "Holy shit, this dude's alive!" And when I told them how I got there, I was like, "Yeah, I took a couple tabs, ended up back around," and they were like, "What? This fucking guy came back to say what's up and feel some kind of way?" Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, when you say system in the center, what
So I was in a treatment center for 3.5 years when I was a kid.
Okay.
Up in Utah. And it was, I was suicidal and angry, hurting other people, not hurting myself to a level that like, was like frequent, but when the outbursts like between medications would get like really, really heavy, because when you switch off one thing, I mean, range from lithium, Zyprexa, Ritalin, Adderall, blah, 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 time release, non-time release, all these different things with different adverse effects. Suicidal tendencies is one of them. Yeah. So, and especially with the methamphetamine going on, it's like racing thoughts.
That you were mentioning there, the fact that you were prescribed so many different things that are used to treat so many different things. Like, that's wild. How old were you at the time?
At 5, I was prescribed like 2 pills, and then as it got older, it was like 3 or 4, and then as the days went on, it was some in the morning, some in the afternoon, and then the evening.
That is absolutely ridiculous.
That carried on till I was about. I didn't do it when I got out. I had asked them to while I was there. I made it a part of my program, and I went out of my way to say I want less pills to take. Yeah. I don't think other kids were doing that, so they kind of had to figure out how to do that with me and like incorporate it, because I asked for a long time, and that was really what I was focused on. I don't give a fuck if you want to give me a level. Don't give me a level. Fuck you. I want less pills. How do I get them? Yeah. And anyway, so I've been taking them my whole life. I didn't feel good about it. And when I got out, all these kids while I was there, they were all like, "You never smoked weed, you never fucked bitches, blah, 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 blah." All right, here we go. It's about to go down. So I got out and I started experimenting and doing stuff, and taking pills that I had already had experience with. And just because I knew already, I was like, I've been taking this shit my whole life. Like, what's the problem with taking a couple extra? Yeah. And then I figured out that it's not going to hit me like it's going to hit everybody else. Yeah. So like all the Adderall, all the other stuff the kids were taking, all the other hypey shit, I took like 190 milligrams of Adderall once. And I went to sleep under a park bench in the rain. Oh yeah. No problem. Yeah. It was not an issue for me. I was just just not out at this point. Like you're not in, you're not out, and it was just something that I was doing my whole life already. So I got to this point where I was like, all right, this isn't fun, and it's been fucking me up my whole life. So I want no part of it anymore. Yeah. And so I started to smoke weed more often and get into more psychedelics. When I did that, acid was the first thing I turned to. Shortly after acid, I was showing up at these shows over in Fullerton. And there's this place called the Tropics Lounge before it got taken down or whatever. And I'd show up there high as tits, bro, on Friday nights. Yeah. And when I was taking acid, I was doing acid once a week without fail, 100% for years. Yeah. Every fucking Friday. And if I missed a Friday, it was cool. All right, I didn't have money. Next Friday, for sure. Yeah. And so then there was weeks that I was like fucking out of it though. And I had never had the opportunity to intake so much information at once. And like to have the ability to go back. I was selling pot, so I was like, all right, I have $10 more. I have 10 more bucks. I have 10 more bucks. I have to fucking had it.
Yeah.
I have money for food and all this other. I was on my skateboard doing my delivery thing.
That's the benefit of
Fuck
that
it.
drug compared to other drugs.
Yeah,
right?
it's like $10 for a launch,
and it's all day.
Yeah, it's 8 hours, dog. Yeah, for years it was 8 hours long, and then it finally got down to like now I take it and like my trips are like like 6 hours, maybe 7 on a really good one, but I don't go out of my way anymore to go find it. It just finds me. I haven't paid for acid or shrooms. I think since I was maybe like 19 years old. I'm 29 years old. It's been 10 years. Yeah. People just find me and they give it to me. Yeah. And so now I do the mushrooms more frequently than I do the acid.
Get that shorter trip. Yeah.
It's a microdose. It's an availability. It's what's available. And I can't get acid as readily available, but also acid is a, I've been struggling with this recently, and as documented as this might be, I don't really give a shit. If somebody finds it and they're that interested in me, cool. But normally I don't let bits out.
Okay.
I think that the amount of times that I've done the hallucinogens, perhaps, I wouldn't phrase the words catching up to me.
Okay.
Because that seems overwhelmingly negative and perhaps an outlook that may distort. Okay. But what I will say is that it takes a severe amount of responsibility to remember who you were, when you were, and what you were doing, if you give a shit.
Yeah.
When it comes to assimilating past the point of trippy fun, when you're actually organizing your brain on that stuff. Which I don't know how many people do that out there. If you do that, awesome. I'm very proud of you. There's a way to restructure everything that's going on and assimilate on the other side. I promise you. I've seen a lot of people do it. But I'm still on the other side of assimilating. It's not even 10 years since I've stopped taking my meds.
Yeah.
I'm still 7 years old in my mind.
Okay.
Because I'm 20. I was 21 when I stopped taking them. I'm 29 now. Hasn't even been 10 years yet. So I still have another 2 years to go, 1.5 years to go of no meds, tripping, figuring it out, leveling my serotonin, blah, 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 working out, making sure I tended these things, eating the right food, and just being part of something bigger.
That's a wild thing, right? I don't think I realized when I was younger how malleable my brain was. I don't think kids do in general, but like me specifically.
We're not told though. We're not told that shit. Let's fucking hype that up. We're not told that.
Yeah.
Nobody gives us, hey man, you know how much fucking power you got, bro? Yeah. More than me, because I'm a bias ass adult and I'm fucked up. It's all up to you now. No pressure, but it's all up to nobody does that.
Yeah.
No one. And it's fucked up.
Nobody tells you how much responsibility you have. You always get told like, hey, you need to figure out where you're going because, you got to get a job and take care of your family and stuff. But like nobody explains like the actual consequences that you have, the actual power that you have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can get a job and support your family. But when you're a kid, like you hear that and you're like, yeah, but why do I really care about that? And really it's like, well, look, you can be a positive aspect of society. You can encourage other people to do the same, and maybe you can change the world by doing that.
Right.
But instead, it tends to be. I'm not an anti-capitalist, right? But it tends to be a capitalistic-based message. You know? Look out for your future so that you can have money and so you can have security. When really, it's no. Plan for your future because you could have influence on the rest of the world by behaving in a certain way. But like I was saying, that I didn't realize how malleable my brain was, like, because I was always fat. And now, like, this is the first time in my life where I've been taking care of myself and getting in shape.
Right here, buddy.
And now, like, when I eat, like, I binge, and it's a trigger in me. Certain environments, like I'm like, I need a bag of candy. Then once I get a bag of candy, I'm hungry afterwards, and I'm like, I'm gonna stop at the gas station. I'm gonna get 2 bags of chips, probably a bag of donuts, some more candy, and some booze as well. But like if I eat in the middle of the day, like I did as a kid, I am drunk for the rest of the day off that food. You
Hmm.
know, like I am just blah, in a daze. You know, and like growing up, like I must have been in that daze consistently.
Yeah.
Like I was never out of it.
Yeah.
And like yeah, that's just now that I'm older and I feel it
Yeah.
now I can get it more like under control and be like, okay, maybe I should have a clear head
Yeah.
sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like I never realized how much food affected my brain, and
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing with everything else. You don't notice how much you get messed up. I used to smoke a lot of weed,
Hmm.
and I had fun when I was high.
Yeah.
Now I take like even like getting secondhand smoke from people.
Yeah.
It doesn't trigger any fun part of my brain. It
Yeah.
triggers the what are you doing with your life right now part of my brain. That's
Well,
like
why?
I
That's what
yeah
it's doing for you. It's not what it's doing against you. It's
yeah
not
no
working against
I can
you.
see that. I can see that. Yeah, that's why like I go out of my way when I talk about psychedelics to tell people like, hey, I do not recommend taking it,
Yeah.
but like it does do a thing where it forces you to ask those questions
Yeah.
about like, hey, what are you doing right now? Why
Yeah.
is this the best use of your
Well, but
time?
is that a harmful question in any
No,
way?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that what it is a it's a dangerous situation for some people to be
Hmm.
in, and because it also like I don't know if your answer to that question will be honest in a state like that. You
It's
know?
not the answer to the question that you're worrying about being honest. It's your reaction to it. So
Yeah,
if you're worried about that, then you just need to silence yourself and just listen more.
yeah.
Yeah,
See,
I'm
see,
serious.
I,
I
I,
tripped on DMT the other day. I
yeah.
came back from the Super Audio Network, took some mushrooms with those guys, had a
Mm-hmm.
great trip on the way home. And on the way home, I realized I was like, oh, I have some DMT at my house.
Oh yeah.
Great. So I remembered where it was. I misplaced it for a long time. And my buddy was there when I got back, Ruben. Shouts out to Rube World. We've been making some music together with Destruct and everybody else. Head Rush just came out like a couple weeks back. So if you haven't played that track, go play Head Rush.
Okay.
It's a fucking banger. Um, anyway, so I got back to the house and I was like, "Yo, dude, I remember where my DMT was." He was like, "What?" And I was like, "And I'm kind of on shrooms already, so it's tonight." And he was like, "I was like, you can stay around." He was
So what form is it in? Is it in?
powder.
Okay, so it's not in. I've seen like people use vape pens for
No,
it,
that's
but it's
absolute bullshit. Okay,
okay.
vape is like a microwave.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like microwaves are bad for you. I'm not trying to get on this whole thing with that. But what I am saying is that if you want something done quickly, sure, vaporize it.
Yeah.
If you want it done the right way, you'll fucking put it the way it's supposed to be done. It's
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
it's like cooking. Like you use the cast iron skillet, or you can pop in a hot pocket and
So
hope for the
it's
best.
powder. It's powder that you smoke though,
Yeah,
or
you smoke
okay.
it. Uh
Yeah.
huh. I mean, like there's other way. I'm sure you could intake it. I'm not sure how it would digest properly or
Yeah.
anything. I think that's more of an ayahuasca blend
Yeah,
when they
because
do the
they have
tea.
to have the MOI inhibitors
There's
so it
something in
doesn't
there,
get
yeah,
destroyed.
that
Yeah,
there's like roots in other plants as well that they use. I've also smoked it on top
but
of
it's not snorted.
lotus flower. No, it's not snorted. No, but like I said, I've smoked it on top of weed, and I've also smoked it on top of lotus flower.
Mm-hmm.
With the lotus flower, it's more of a relaxing elevation to the psychoactive experience, and I would say with weed, it's more real quick, but then it's also a short lived.
Mm-hmm.
So by itself, it has a little bit of a 10-minute or so longer duration,
Okay.
and then with weed, it's a little bit less. Some people just throw it on the weed because they're like, "Fuck it,"
Yeah.
and that's what I had to do the other day, and I was fine with that. But in the past, I would strictly dab it is the
Okay.
best way to do it.
Yeah.
So just hot surface, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But what was cool about me going in to this place and getting challenged
Yeah.
was because normally I go through a series of questions with self, arrive on one, and then ask my universe a question while I'm in that space and accept anything I'm given. That's my recipe for success in there.
Mm.
And that's the way it goes in a lot of places. But so I just organize first, and then I go, okay, I take a deep breath. And I remember self, but I also remember that anything that I have to let go of is something that I love already because it's here.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
and even the hate, like even the regret, even all that other stuff. It's like if it's part of me and it's not supposed to be, I'll know by the end of this.
Yeah.
That's what it's illuminating for you.
Mm-hmm.
All those things, the acid, the mushrooms, and so on. That's why people get convoluted when they're in there, is because they think, oh no, I've been challenged in a way that I don't really fuck with because normally I don't do any of this shit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the difference between someone who's just getting in there and maybe experimenting and so on, between that and then someone who's been there a while and maybe been making corrections and doing the micro dosing and the programming of self and awareness monologue, if you will, all this other shit. It takes time to break into yourself. And I'll be honest, like the other day I saw my ex-girlfriend at the grocery store very randomly, and not the one that I just had, which is the one that I'm currently dealing with up here, but the one that was on a back burner that I was under the impression I have taken care of my drama.
Yeah.
I have thought it through and I'm so good. Pat me on the back. Fuck that. It fucking crippled me instantly. I was like, what do I say? Oh, I'm getting smaller. I'm getting smaller. It's like I fucking just became nothing in front of this broad, and she didn't probably even know at all. Because I remember she's not as much in depth as I was. I was like, she's probably doesn't even know.
Yeah, I've been in that exact situation where like I saw someone who I thought I don't have any feelings at all, and then heart started beating out of my chest like, oh snap, like this is the fight or flight.
It's your silly, it's your ego, you know. You thought something very quickly and you didn't spend any time on it, and so on. So no breath, no connotation, no value, no the quickness. It's stupid. It's not stupid, but it's stupid. It's turning off your fucking signals. It's literally like removing your ability to try and do things.
And, it is it's a prey instinct. It's what rabbits do when they see a snake. You know, they freeze up.
Yeah, you become a victim.
Yeah. Instead of taking right in the wave, right?
Our brains have been taken away by the process of an instant. We got to start over with the flint. Get about this instantaneous business. Take time for the mind to build as you bear witness. What dedication will do is magical if you stick with it. Yeah.
So is that just that's
the new flavor elaborator right there.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Speaking of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So in this world where you go and you speak to the universe, what do you think that is? What do you think the universe is?
I think it's like a giant mirror for self on a maximized or a macro level. So it's like a micro or macro level.
What do you think the self is?
A blend with everything else. I mean, it's a very keen resemblance between us and everything else that's going on around us. That's natural, and even some of the stuff that is man-made that's so closely in resemblance. But you know, the key thing is to remember what is and what isn't. You know,
do you have
regurgitated.
You have a favorite philosopher?
I have a few.
Okay.
I have three off the top four off the top that I really like. Sorry, I can't just do three. So I got Alan Watts, Terence McKenna. Alan for the religious understanding of multitude, and he involves a ha-ha here and there. Ha-ha. Remember this, you know? That's why I like Alan. Terence is a little bit more, I would say, strict to the trip. Literal knowledge. Lots of what he's saying can't be understood, and people can't handle his voice because they're babies. It's like if a voice is who gives a fuck what the voice sounds like? It could be Johnny Depp or some cocksucker that's been smoking cigarettes out the side of his neck for 7 years. But let me tell you, if it's telling me something cool, I'm gonna figure out what it is, right? Anyway, so you got your Alan Watts, you got your Terence McKenna. And then I would go to say Neil deGrasse Tyson is a very interesting man, more common and more in the now than these other dudes who have been part of the past and led us to where we're at. And then you have Sadhguru is also another favorite of mine from, you know, he's more.
Have you ever heard Akira the Don? He's a, I think, Australian producer, DJ. But he makes these albums with various intellectual figures where he takes their speeches
Yeah.
and puts them over beats. And he has
Smart.
an Alan Watts album.
Nice.
Just beats with Alan Watts.
I gotta check that out. Akira the Don.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, those all four of those I have not heard much of. Alan Watts I've heard a bit from the Akira the Don.
Yeah, I've sampled him as well onto some of my albums.
I'll tell you what though, I'm not a fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson though.
Why?
He just trusts science too much. I have a distrust of science.
All right.
Here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. When I was in school, they told us the percentage at which like the Earth's core is made up of iron and whatnot. They'd be like, oh, it's 40% iron. 50% carbon or whatever. They give me these percentages, but like, how do they know? Like, I'm assuming like the process is like they send seismic waves down there and then test the rate at which the waves comes back. But like that can give you the density of it, but I can't imagine it gives you the percentage of the elements. What?
You stand on one side of the think about it. If you have $1 million, okay, first of all, and you fly one cocksucker to the top and one cocksucker to the bottom.
Yes.
And you tell them, hey, send something at each other through the surface. And you measure how long it takes for each of those things to get to some point where it's hot.
No, yeah, that perfectly makes sense for me for the density of the core. But the specific elements in there, that's the part that I'm like, hold up. Is this just a bunch of garbage? Are you making assumptions? From what I've been told when I've brought this question up to people is that they are making the percentage analysis based on what is already known about the Earth's core, which is
in comparison.
Well, about the Earth's crust, yeah. And so they go, well, we assume since the crust has this and the lava has this when it surfaces up, then it must be this.
What's science been though since the beginning? A bunch of people that have to sit around a table and decide on what is and what isn't.
Yeah.
It's us coming together as communicators and evaluators of a scenario saying, oh, I've done this test. And so therefore, because I've done this many times, 5,000 times, and you've only done it 100 times, my data is more important than your data because I've ventured further. And therefore, because I ventured further, it's only fair that my data trumps your data.
Yeah, I think that science has a very particular usage, which is understanding effects of repeatable processes.
Yeah, behavioral analysis.
Yes. So I think it works particularly good for that.
I agree.
How do I say this? It works good at creating predictive models. I know that if I do this is most likely to occur.
Right.
Where it falls is I don't think that it does as well at describing what is. It does well at describing what will be if you do something.
There are large things that are left out of science because science cannot explain these things.
Yeah, I think that's true too. There's
inexplicable, if you will.
Different so like levels of being that I think
a rat travels throughout a maze but doesn't think to climb over the wall.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying is that you are nothing but a rat in the maze of life here, and you're not created to think higher than what you're created to think. If you assimilate to something higher than the rest of us, let us know.
I'll tell you, Neil deGrasse Tyson did give me one of my most favorite facts I've ever heard, which is that gravity affects time.
Yeah.
And so that the clocks that they send up into space stations are actually broken to measure a different rate of time so that it will match up to what it is on Earth. They actually have to slow it down or something so that once they get into I think they speed it up. They break the clock so it speeds up so that once it gets to the slower rate of time out in space, they're able to still communicate about it, which has led to me believing that I don't think there are anything out in space besides the Earth. I think the moon is just the Earth in like 15 billion years. I don't know. The sun's the Earth in 40 billion years. You know, we're traveling through time once we get out there is what I'm saying.
He said this other cool thing that I really like, and it's one of the things that has definitely stuck with me. And it goes throughout many other, like this metaphor can be carried, and it's very prosperous. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
That's a humble reminder, you know? And I always think that it can be like, you know, like worked with, but to like try to work against it or to try to squeeze it for more juice than it's willing to offer you is indignifying, if you will, and I think you deserve to be wiped off
Yeah.
the earth for that. So
For thinking that the
for thinking
universe
that
makes
you're fucking
sense,
big enough to fucking control shit.
understand it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you're not.
I get
Nobody
it.
is. And
Yeah.
for everybody that is, guess what? You go catch the next avalanche or truck to the face,
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know?
I tend to really like knowledge as a tool thinking
Hmm.
because of that.
Yeah.
Because like no knowledge is true, I don't think, all knowledge is as true if as it's able to help you go along, keep going,
Knowledge applied through experience is wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I agree. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so let's see. Philosophy we talked about. What So Alan Watts, Terence McKenna is he focuses mostly on psychedelics, yeah.
Yeah, a large portion of explanatory, I think that's the word, explanatory, progress and DMT and other things.
Is Alan Watts, does he have a
Evolutionary explanation.
relation? Okay, I was thinking he had some kind of relationship with Ram Dass.
No, Ram Dass is actually Timothy Leary's very good friend. It's funny that you brought him up. Ram's one of my favorites because he wrote the book Be Here Now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the book, you know that it's not written it's not written like a book. It's written in spirals and side to sides and
nice.
tilted, twisted things that you have to turn the book this way and this way to read.
Yeah.
And that's how he wanted to write the book.
Yeah.
And it was all about participation, I think, and perhaps tricking the mind into doing the little things that otherwise seem silly.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's reading from left to right in block letters.
Yeah.
Oh, so perfectly aligned from left to right, from 15 to 16 and 17 forward.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, right.
So create something new. So that's what I've decided to do with hip hop.
Yeah, I love that. I think that like changing the form of things like that people are used to is super fun.
It's like flubber.
Yeah. There's a book that I haven't read. I was taught about it in one of my English classes called Atomic Aztecs that doesn't have a C at all. It just uses K's for C's and uses all kinds of different spelling like that because it's like, well, why do we have to spell correctly if things make sense to your brain when you hear the words? Why does it have to be spelled with a C instead of a K? Spell it with K.
Right.
So anything that like breaks the form like that, it's like, yeah, break the form.
Yeah.
All that matters is the experience. I like that you said too, like it plays off the idea that you have to participate to like, read it.
Right.
Which I think is one of the benefits of reading in general is that it's a participatory thing. Like I can turn on the TV and turn my brain off for an hour and watch TV.
Yeah.
But like if I read a book, I'll turn my brain off and read a couple pages and then go back.
Significant difference.
What did I just read?
I've been looking for the difference between the two for like a long, long time, and you just pointed it out so haphazardly, like without even any hesitating. That was cool.
No, yeah, I've thought about that a lot. Okay. Why? I've thought about it in the sense because I'm not a big reader, but like I feel like it helps to read. I think it's good for the brain, and I was like, why does it work?
Yeah,
and I think it's that process of reciting, because you have to recite what you read in your brain to really read
make
it,
sure you understand it and make sense of it, or else you're gonna miss something.
Yeah. You ever read I haven't read it, On the Road by Jack Kerouac?
No, I want to.
It has no chapters or paragraph breaks or anything. And I think it was written originally on a like scroll like piece of paper. It was just one page that he
That's
wrote
the legend.
That's the legend. Yeah.
He carried it around with him.
Yeah. He does have a great book though called Dharma Bums. I've read that one. That's also about.
He was one of the big dudes that traveled around with Timothy Leary and, like I said, all these other guys.
Yeah, all these like early hippies.
They're called beatniks.
Yeah.
Beatniks. The fucking legend of the beatnik.
Ginsbergs and Kerouacs.
Yeah.
I loved when I was starting out as Kid Icarus because I used to rap under the name MC Misfit when I was in high school, which is
it's funny that's somebody else I'm working with right now.
Oh yeah, Misfit.
Shouts.
When I started doing Kid Icarus, like Kerouac and that whole beat scene was like I was really interested in it because because it was the hippies without the annoying parts of the hippies.
Yeah.
You know, the uncleanliness and the kind of pop version.
Yeah.
You know, the hippie movement went pop when it became the hippies.
Yeah.
Before it was kind of more put together and
because
more,
people wanted to ride the line. You can only have
Yeah.
resistance for so long before people start to hop in and start to participate, man.
Yeah.
You know, and anybody who loves knows that.
Yeah.
So, like, you know,
What?
you stick around, you apply the love. People are gonna fight that shit because they don't like change. But
Yeah.
guess what? Stick around and apply more love. See what happens.
So you're you make a bit of beats, yeah? You said
Yeah.
you can mess around on like a Casio and
Yeah.
a beat pad and stuff.
Yeah.
What is your how do I say this? Like, what are some tips and tools that you use to find a sound when you're making music? Is there?
I would like to mention that I did spend an ample amount of time before coming to hip hop listening to other genres of music.
Yeah.
So that first and foremost is very important.
Mm-hmm.
You have to venture outside of typical hip hop to find, you know, the roots of where it comes from.
Yeah.
Because it's a secondary music type. And anybody who is, you know, within the art form understands that. We've borrowed our sound from someone else. And we move forward with that in mind, but we create greatness.
That's something
You
that
know?
is uniquely hip hop, right? Is that it is a music style that exists musically based on only other styles, because sampling is such a heavy part of the culture,
especially when you're trying to talk and say something that hasn't already been said before.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of MCs that feel like they're doing that, and I know I'm not doing that, so I'm okay with that. But like, there's a lot of people who are out there on some third eye rap shit, and they're like, "Oh yeah, dude, fucking all this special stuff that I'm going to tell you about," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'd like, when I start hearing things I haven't heard before, I'll let you know."
Yeah.
And you know, it's like I'm not trying to be egotistical at all, but like, I like to listen really, really deeply, so that way I can understand what you're saying. But if you're just regurgitating a bunch of shit that I've previously heard off of a radio commercial or the television when I was at someone else's house, because I don't do cable.
Okay.
But like, if you know all that blah blah blah, like I can't plug into your program like the way that you give a shit, because I don't invest in I would say any politics. I hear things and I have my opinions on what matters for human life. I don't have opinion outside of that. It's not a political bias. It's, I care about something.
Yeah.
And if you don't care about something, that's cool. But then, I mean, like, if you want to like put it to a vote, politicize it, that's on you. I feel like it should be an like just like a independent decision. If you can make independent decisions, then you should be able to go out and have a voice, and perhaps what someone else could do, but not what they're doing. Not, it shouldn't. I don't feel like your vote should be definitive of how somebody else lives their life. I don't feel like that's righteous. You know, and I think we're stuck behind an old way of thinking and pattern, perhaps just because, you know, it's what seems to be the way, or we've done it for so long or whatever. But that's like what a lot of, you know, heroin addicts do, or like anybody else who's a drug addict is, well, I've done this for so long, so I can't change. It's like, well, you're just an addict to the system, or you're an addict to all this other stuff. And that's just one, like, very, I might even say insignificant, not simile, but metaphor to use in that partition between the two topics. But there's plenty of other things too that I could use, but they would cause a greater divide between the point I'm trying to prove, which is that it's just you, man.
Yeah.
It's you. If you can do you successfully, then you have an ability to reach out and say, I've handled my things today. What can I help you with? You know, and your part that you play in society is dope, because that is how you measure how much you can do for you, and then also for others. Because most people that hustle get up at 6 a.m. to do 5 a.m. to do so before the sun rises, and they watch it happen, and they go throughout their day. And they get their 8 hours, and they're up the next day to conquer and destroy whatever it takes. I do that because I run multiple gardens. I got the delivery service. I got these albums I'm trying to write. I'm trying to record. I'm trying to go to shows. And also remember what it's like to value myself. Take the time for a breath each day. I don't have kids yet, so I should be doing these things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like where I'm like, oh no, my control is lost. Or like, well, for a few of my friends that have, different scenarios, whether with children or with a wife or with a husband or whatever.
Yeah.
They have a scenario where they have to be interdependent off of how somebody else may react or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunately not in a relationship right now, so that's a more controllable thing.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to do that for myself, so that maybe one day when I get back to really caring more about where I'm going to go with somebody in the future, creating either children or adopting or whatever, whatever happens, I'm cool with making those decisions. I don't see how all these other things play into the dream of how my life is going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I participate, though, and the reason why I decided to start paying taxes, doing the things that other people do, is because assimilating and becoming part of what's going on creates a connection with others.
I'm laughing a bit.
Paying
tax.
Yeah, this is stuff like I don't feel like my taxes are ever going to actually go anywhere.
Oh yeah,
and reach anything that I give a fuck about, because I don't vote for that. Mm-hmm. So who am I to have a piece? I don't have a piece about that. Mm-hmm. I don't fucking vote. So who am I to have a right or a think or a thought or whatever on that topic? I don't have one. So I say I'm not political. Yeah, and that's easier for me to do. Mm-hmm. But also because it's easier, it's kind of pussyfooting.
Yeah,
because it's easier.
Yeah,
so
I get you.
The hard way is arduous, but guess what? You get more out of the hard way. If it's going to be hard to get up into office and clear all these old white motherfuckers out that don't belong there, that want the same old rules with the same old bullshit and telling other people what they can or can't do with their bodies, or all this other shit about the border, or all this other shit about blah, 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 blah. Good Lord, I just, how many more Thanksgivings are you going to take of mine? Yeah. Or whatever. How many more dinner sessions? How many more fucking evenings of congregation with others is this going to conquer and destroy, create boundaries between? Like,
yeah, I don't have the will or effort to figure out which of the local judges are up for election, which is probably the biggest influence.
Yes,
I could
locally.
have.
Yes.
Like, I mean, that guy determines whether or not somebody spends 10 years in prison or 2 years in prison.
Right.
Like, that's in the judges. But like, if I'm not putting in the effort to like figure that out, like, how can I really have a say on anything bigger? Like, that's an actual control I have over stuff. Yeah. So I get I get it. I'm pretty
politics.
Yeah.
What will we do with you?
So we are at the end of the episode right now. So I always give the guests a chance to shout out anybody that you think is not getting enough recognition.
Okay.
Any other artists, visual artists, music artists, any businesses, any anything else.
Wow, this is a nice list. Surfers.
I don't know who are in your friend circle.
So okay, let's nowhere significant with the starting line, but Mosaic 1, Destruct, Chris, Emilia, Ellie, Max. Let's do Kira, Sophie, Jackson, my mother, my father, of course. All my family is very, very supportive towards what I do, everything I do, which is cool. So I have them on the understanding and the cusp of this is how I live my life, but this is how we have to be together, Let's move on and talk about anybody that I've met in my LA family, from Pomona to East Los and back, out there in West Covina, Colorado, Nico, Calais, Sage, people that I met out in New York. Shouts out to Craig. Shouts out to Elle. Let's see, people that I want to continue to do projects with. Oso Blanco. Shouts out to EQ. If you have the opportunity, go to the GoFundMe page. Send this man a couple dollars. He's trying to live right now. Because I mentioned it before, shouts out to me and all the effort I'm putting in.
Right on.
That's a big thing for me right now. I mentioned all these other people and, the love and the faith I have in them, even the people that aren't doing well. It's really like, by the way, people that try hard are especially hard to find in life. Mm-hmm. And especially when you point stuff out to them, like what I just did, Several times I heard you say things I could have been like, oh, this could better that, or this could better that, or this could. But instead, I held my tongue because I recognized the time and place. But for the people that really care, and I have voiced myself to them, and they try hard past the regard of self, like they're like, you know what, you're right. You're fucking right. What can I do to better myself in this situation? How can I do this? How can I do this? How can I do this? And they just take it and they run. Prime example of that right now is Rube. Ruben has been a fucking animal in the gym, mentally, struggling in plenty other areas, like we all do. But he's taking control of his life while that's happening. And I wanted to give a shout out to him for conscious effort and appreciation for his energy in life right now. It's really fucking cool. And then, yeah, man, Mad Chemist. Who else? Let's see. Anybody who I've done a feature with, anybody who wants to continue to make music with me. We've got Project Mayhem. We got Ryman.
Yeah, Mayhem.
We got, Foxy La Chingona, Mr. Whoopty. All these cool ass cats, man. I've gotten to work with a lot of cool people, like I said, from East LA and back, and all over this state, and Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, blah, 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 blah. So I'm really moving around and I'm putting my heart down. Flavor Elaborator is going to come with a big, big imprint. So I hope everybody's ready for the next 2 albums. These are going to be sensational movements. And shouts out to Definite Mass. We got a track coming out here in the next little bit. All right. Nice. I got to put out a single. It's going to be called Fahrenheit. Okay. And then we'll put out another one. It's going to be called Glow. And both of these resemble new styles for me. Fahrenheit was an assimilation to work with a friend of mine who not only wrote down on the joint, got down with the pen, but he produced the track. So shouts out to my man Def Mass. Also teaching mad children right now with the beats in school, teaching them piano, teaching them how to write, musical ideology and orchestration and whatnot and so forth. So this is all something that we're, if we can pass this on to our kids so they can learn and then, voice their opinion through music. That's a big, big thing. I think this is the last living language we got on planet Earth. It trumps all the other borders, all the other laws, all the other religious aspects, and blah, 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 and brings us together. All we need is a tune. That's it, bro. You know what I mean? So expand the mind, love your neighbor, love yourself.
All right,
peace.
Cool. All right, yeah. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Paris Martin.
Yeah,
he makes great music. And
Paris Martin's the man.
He makes merch, and I just found out yesterday he sells toys as well, like Funko Pops and stuff. Yeah. So a quick shout out to him. He's a cool dude. And with that is going to be the end of the episode. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, man.
Yes, sir.
Really enjoyed it. Good talk. Have a good night, everybody. I'm feeling blessed. Tell me how are you? Just let me know if there's anything that I could do. Yeah, I'm feeling blessed. Tell me how are you? Ain't nobody change the world like I'm certain.